This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, all right. So we have a quorum. Any public comments at this point?
There are none, Chairwoman.
Okay, and presentations?
We have no presentations.
Thank you. And item number 5, action calendar, and 5A.
Yeah, thank you, Chairwoman Kwan, members of the committee and members of the board and the public. Good morning to you. We have a couple of items on the action calendar today starting on packet page number 3. The first one, 5A, pertains to some sponsorship community outreach requests for approval, and I'll read them to you. There are 2 here. The first one is from Director Gray. Director Gray requests consideration for West Basin to sponsor the South Bay Workforce Investment Board 25th Annual Awards Ceremony, scheduled to be held on Wednesday, October 28th, 2020. Director Gray would like the board to consider a $3,000 sponsorship that would grant West Basin a speaking opportunity for a district representative and an advertisement promoting district awareness. The second request for community outreach support is also from Director Gray. Director Gray requests consideration for West Basin to sponsor the Hawthorne Chamber of Commerce Thanksgiving food giveaway, scheduled to be held on Tuesday, November 24th, 2020. Director Gray would like the board to consider a $1,500 sponsorship that would grant West Basin a booth/table to distribute district information and an advertisement promoting district awareness. So those are the 2 items. Hand it back to you, Chairwoman.
Okay, on 5A, so when is the ceremony? I mean, yeah, is it virtual? The
Yeah,
South Bay.
The South Bay Workforce is a virtual event, correct?
So if it's a virtual event, why does it cost $3,000? I mean, what's the $3,000 for? Do we have the detail on the thing?
Yes, it's in your board packet if you go to pages 5 and 6.
Yeah, so what is the $3,000 for then? If that's a virtual event, I mean, what expenses? And what do we get? West Basin as?
Yeah. So if I think you go to packet page 8, this is the platinum sponsorship, and it lists there the items you get for $3,000. A service logo promotion on their website for a year, product service promotion and newsletter, display advertising during the event and on the website, logo on promo video and on video webpage, and logo displayed and verbal recognition during the event.
Okay, does this qualify? I wouldn't know. Does it qualify as, I guess, in a quote for sponsorship? Because I know things change. Does it qualify now, in the sponsorship code? I think maybe that's what I meant to say.
Steve, would you care to opine on that? Last year we did the event. Of course, it was live, and this Director Kwan is asking, does the virtual, the fact that it's being held virtually, change anything?
Yeah, the criteria for like third party for sponsorship of third party events such as this, it has to have at least one of 3 elements. There has to be a speaking opportunity for a district representative at the event, or there has to be an opportunity for the district to have a booth or some type of presence to distribute district materials, or if there is for example, something that has a program like a luncheon or an annual event where we'd have an advertisement in the program promoting district programs. So of course, our code did not anticipate COVID nor the prevalence of Zoom meetings and virtual events, but our criteria still stands. An opportunity for a speaking opportunity or an opportunity to distribute district information or an advertisement. And it looks from this event that it meets two of the criteria, so it would qualify.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Steve. All right, so any questions from other board member, from Director Deere?
No, I'm reading all the material here and pretty clear.
Okay, yeah. All right, great. Thank you. So, Director Deere, is it okay to move this item 5A to the 5A to the board?
Yes.
The first item, right? 5A, yeah, because it's two item on 5A, yeah, 5A to the board. Okay, fine then. Let's move that to the board. Thank you. And then we have item 5B. Oh, no, 5A2, right? 5A number 2, sponsorship to Hawthorne Chamber of Commerce for Thanksgiving food giveaway.
Yeah, that was part of the same, that was all part of 5A, Chairwoman. So both the South Bay Workforce Investment and the Hawthorne Chamber of Commerce, those are the two I read out.
Okay, so I just have one quick question. I guess have to do with I guess the election. I don't know the fine detail or in plans. Maybe Steve could answer the question. So this is in Hawthorne area, which is Director Deere, I guess, serving area, district area. So
Yep.
I know that this event is not until November 24th, and we are not to sponsor anything like 6 months ahead of the event. I don't know, does it apply if the event is after and then we approve it now? One question. And I know that this event is requested by Director Gloria Gray. Yeah, so I know it's outside district, but still, I know that she sponsored it, but it's outside district, but still is in Director Deere's district. Is that okay to do that? I mean, as a director that's up for re-election, so please tell me. Do you understand my question, Steve? I'm sorry. Yeah.
Steve, you're on mute.
I apologize. I was muted. This has to do with the district's administrative code regulations concerning community outreach events. And as you know, any of those events have to be related to the promotion of the district and its programs. And we have limitations in the code that are defined as follows. It states that directors are prohibited from requesting district participation or sponsorship of community outreach events which are scheduled to occur within a district division that is subject to an election, and which are scheduled to occur during the period beginning on the last date by which the subject director must file papers with the Los Angeles County, which is, I believe, in July or August, until the date of certification of results of any such election. This does not apply to district divisions in which a director is unopposed in the election. So, and if a director is defeated in any district election, they can't participate in the community outreach programs after the date of the results. So going back to the first limitation, so directors are prohibited from requesting district participation in events which are scheduled to occur within a district, a district division that is subject to an election and which is scheduled to occur during the period beginning on the last date by which the subject director must file elections with Los Angeles County. And that is I believe the directors have to file in late July or mid-August for election. That's the last date. And so if we use the middle of August, the blackout date would be from the middle of August until the date of the certification of the results would be, and the election is November 3rd. And I'm not sure when the date of certification would be, but what is the date of this planned event?
November 20 something, I think.
24th of November, 2020.
Sorry. Apologize, my phone just rang. So for the, yeah, I need to determine when the date of the certificate, because this could fall within the blackout period. Because municipal water district directors take office now in the first week of December. I guess what I recommend with this one, Director Kwan, is that it move. It can be agendized for the regular meeting, but at this time, without a recommendation until I can determine when the end of the blackout date would be. If the certification of the election results is likely to fall before November 24th, it should be okay. But if because that would terminate the blackout period before the date of this event. If,
Okay.
however, the certification is likely to fall after November 24th, this event would be in the blackout period and would not be permitted. So at this time, I'd recommend it. It can move forward, but I think the best thing would be without a recommendation, so I could determine when the blackout period would end.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Thank you. So Director
Director
Deere?
Kwan, Director
Yeah.
Kwan, I have a question. It's
Sure.
Director Gray. Yeah. Steve, does the code speak to the event being held during that period, or the fact that a director is sponsoring the event?
Hang on, let me pull it up again.
Because Director Deere is not sponsoring the event. The request came in directly to me.
Right,
So does the
right.
code speak
Yeah,
to the director requesting it, or what?
Right. It doesn't, the language doesn't limit it to a director who is requesting the event. It just says directors are prohibited from requesting district participation in these events, which are scheduled to occur within a division that is subject to an election and are within this blackout period that we're trying to determine. So in my view, the way this is written, the fact that Director Deere is not making this request does not change the analysis. It appears to apply to all directors requesting participation in such events. If they are scheduled to occur within this blackout period, they would not be, the outreach would not be available for that event.
All right, and you're suggesting to be agendized later for you to determine whether or not that the event would be held during a blackout period?
Yeah, I think I'd be able to talk to the elections office and just look at past certifications of our elections to see when the blackout period is likely to end. We're talking about a period of November 3rd, and that's 3 weeks. And frankly, I don't recall in the past when those results have been certified, but I should be able to determine with some certainty when the blackout period would end. And then I can report on this prior to the regular meeting for October, and the board would be able to consider it at that time.
That would be adequate time to consider the request.
I think it would be adequate time for me to determine the blackout period. In terms of the recipient of the sponsorship, I
Right.
assume that would be okay as well, but I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, well, I think it's time for the board to consider it. Okay, thank you.
Good thing.
Thank you, Steve. Director Deere, you have any question on this item?
No.
Okay, thank you. So we will just move the item to the board.
Second.
Thank you. When Steve will come back with, more information, more defined. Thank you. Thank you. So,
Chairwoman Kwan, I just want a quick clarification here. So we're moving the item to the board with a recommendation for the South Bay workforce to approve that one, and we're moving the Hawthorne Chamber one to the board without a recommendation
without,
until Steve comes back. Yeah.
without recommendation, until Steve come back with, some more information. Thank you. Thank you. So we have item, any other questions from other directors? So sorry. Director Williams? Director Houston? Okay, if not.
Director Williams, no, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move to item 5B, request to waive interest rate requirement under the Small and Community Bank Investment Program.
Just a minute there, Director Kwan. How about 5AC? 5AC.
Do we have a 5AC? I'm sorry, I'm looking at my.
It's a one-page community outreach budget.
Director Deere, that's an attachment with 5A.
Yeah.
It passed. All right. Well, this is passed. I have no problem with it.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't see a 5AC. Sorry. Okay. So is
5B.
that? So we're okay to move on to 5B then.
Correct. Thank you, Chairwoman Kwan. So as has been happening recently, some of our small and community bank participants are not able to meet the minimum requirement in terms of an interest rate. And we have passed some recently. The board has approved some waivers. So this is another request for a waiver from one of our banks in the program, One Unity. Not One Unity, One United. I don't have, Mary Ann is on the line here. Mary Ann, can you please cover this item for us?
Sure. Thank you, Patrick. Good morning, Chairwoman Kwan, and board members. I'll make the presentation on action item 5B, which can be found on page 15 of your committee packet. As you recall, West Basin has a small community bank investment program that allows us to invest funds in small community banks within our service area. However, the program does have certain requirements the bank needs to meet, and Patrick did mention one, which is the idea of the bank having to offer a competitive rate of return. Specifically, our policy states that the investment has to enjoy a rate of return within 10 basis points of LAIF, or the local agency investment fund. As mentioned, One United cannot meet this requirement currently, and we are asking, staff is asking the board consider waiving the interest rate requirement for One United Bank and to direct the deputy treasurer to negotiate terms. Just a little background on this. I think Patrick did mention we have had similar situations over the last few months. Back in May, we brought to you the Manufacturers Bank and Broadway Federal as well had this situation. And then more recently in July, we had Malaga Bank also approach us with the similar situation, and your board did consider the waiver of the requirement. Just a little background on why this is happening. As you recall, the Federal Reserve reduced the overnight rate of return in March to 0. And with the stresses in the financial markets due to the pandemic, we saw that interest rates had fallen across the yield curve. In fact, this morning I looked up what a 1-year Treasury bill would be, and it's trading at about 12 basis points, or about 1.12%. So very, very low. Anyhow, just wanted to give you a little background about what's happening in the market and why we're having to come back to you several times now. And as I mentioned, under the Administrative Code Section 4-1.301, Section 2C, the Small Community Bank Investment Program Policy requires West Basin to obtain the interest rate within 10 basis points of LAIF. As I mentioned, One United cannot meet that. And so currently the LAIF rate, I did look that up this morning, and as of the 14th, that rate is at 0.63. Unfortunately, as I said, One United cannot meet within 10 basis points of that. So staff is requesting that the board approve to waive the interest rate requirement and allow the Deputy Treasurer to negotiate terms and report back to the Finance and Admin Committee next month. That concludes my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Marianne. Yes, Director Deere, any question on this item, please?
No, I move that we approve it.
Okay, other directors, any comment or questions?
No, thank you. It's Houston.
Okay, thank you. So thank you, Marianne, thank you. So let's move to information item. Oh, I'm so sorry. Let's move this item to the board for approval. I beg your pardon.
Thank you.
Okay, now we move on to the information calendar, item 6A.
Yes, so we have, today we have 4 items on the information calendar. And you will recall that when we passed the budget back in June, staff was requested to come back to the board in October to review and revisit some of the key assumptions that we made for the fiscal year 2021 budget. And we chose October because we wanted to see what Metropolitan's review was like, Metropolitan Water District, to see what their review, which was held in September on their budget assumptions, which they did, and they did not change any rates that they'd adopted back in April, stayed the same. So Margaret, I think you have an accompanying presentation that's going to go over the key assumptions, namely the flow, or sales, I should say, the potable sales projections versus what actually came in, and then compare that to the COVID window this year, and this for the same period of going back 3 years. So Margaret, I think I've said enough there to tee you up, and I know you have a presentation, so please take it away, Margaret Mosher.
Yes, I can still say good morning. Good morning, directors. Good to see you all. So I wanted to turn your attention, I believe that's going to go on screen, the PowerPoint presentation. Thank you so much. So starting on the PowerPoint presentation and turning to page 2 of that presentation, I wanted just to remind us all, sorry, let me adjust my mask, remind us all of the adopted budget that we had for fiscal year 2021. As you see on this chart here, you see revenues of $224 million, expenses of $187 million, providing us a net revenue of $36.9 million. With our debt service of $23.7 million, we ended up with a debt coverage ratio of 1.56. As you know, our debt coverage ratio is 1.75, so we did adopt a budget that was slightly below what our targeted debt coverage is. But we are hoping through the monitoring of our expenses and our revenues, we can see ourselves in a more positive position by the end of the fiscal year. Turning to the next page, page 3. This just gives you, again, a little bit more breakdown of what those revenues are. And for a number of those revenues, you can see that the potable and recycled, those and our desalted brackish water sales at the very last line, That one there, those three items are based off of variable sales. Most importantly is those water sales to our potable and our recycled water, and so we'll have some additional analysis associated with those particular ones, since those are very dependent, or we are very dependent upon what those assumptions are. Some of the other numbers that you see there are standby charge, or fixed capital charge, fixed service charge. All those items are generally fixed in nature, and so we do anticipate seeing those revenues materialize as shown there. And our water use efficiency grants and interest, those can be somewhat dependent upon how the programs are going, and their use of our reserves, our designated funds could impact that as well. Turning to the next page, page 4 of the presentation. Now you will see the expenses. Again, we have $224 million. Again, we will talk about that imported water purchases of $129 million. And then you can see the other components that are there as well. Turning to page 5 of the presentation, you can see the water sales. Next slide, please. Thank you. You can see the water sales that we projected for or budgeted for the fiscal year 2021 in that far right column. And you can see how that compares to that middle column there for the 1920. And what we wanted just to share with you is just to where did we end up for the year? You can see we did very well in comparison to our potable retail compared to our budget, as well as also in our potable barrier sales. Our recycled waters were slightly down compared to the budget for 1920. And all of that was important information and a backdrop for when we were discussing our water sales assumptions. If you recall, we did have 3 workshops with the board. The first one being in March to kind of tease up what does fiscal year 2021 look like. But then in in April, we started to present the overall sort of budget presentation. But it was at that time, of course, that we started to see some impact to our water sales, and we wanted to, at that time, take a more conservative approach as it related to our water sales. And so that's why you see a lower number there for potable retail. And then also on the recycled water, you see a slight decline. But a little bit more on that one is that we actually had an increase as it relates to our sales to the West Coast barrier. However, it was a decrease as it relates to our refinery sales. So overall, it was sort of a net 0, if you will, slightly less. But we're going to go a little bit more in detail on the following slides. So turning to page 6 of your presentation, please. This first slide here is to provide you a detail regarding our imported retail potable water sales. Before I go there, I wanted just to identify what each of those lines represent. So if you look at the dotted line, that dotted line there represents the 3-year average. So what we did for that particular one is we looked at the March of 2017, March of 2018, and March of 2019, and we averaged it to say, hey, how have we been performing in those last 3 years, and get that sort of average trend line, if you will, for the year. The dotted, the dashed line, so the kind of lighter blue number there, that represents the budget. So we did a similar thing. We took a look at what that trend line is, and we applied it to what those water sales are that we assumed for the overall year. And then finally, that solid line represents the actual for in this case, the 2020 year. What we wanted to show as well on this slide is not just the 3 months for fiscal year 2021, but we also wanted to show you from the time of the pandemic that began in March 2020 through current. So we just processed our water sales on Tuesday of this week. So we were, trying to get the latest information in here for you. And you can see that, again, what we saw in April was we saw this significant drop. We saw a significant drop as it related to our imported water sales and that trend line that we saw there. But then, and that's why we made an assumption at that moment to drop our recycled water, our imported water retail sales down from a 106,000 assumption down to 103. But then you see in May, we got right back up to that trend line. So that kind of that pattern that we see, we're going back up there. And then you continue to see that number going up in that all the way up through September. But what I wanted to point out to you is that you see that dashed line through July through September. You see that that is below that actual number. And the reason for that is we made that assumption that the imported retail sales would continue to be at a depressed level in that first quarter for the new fiscal year. So it's 1,000 acre-feet less in each of those years, each of those months. And so you can see that, we are doing well, but if we actually had not lowered the assumption, we'd be pretty much right on budget. So the takeaway here is, of course, that we see ourselves in a positive position relating to our water sale. While it does look positive in regards to our budget, again, we anticipate that we will continue on in a positive way for the remainder of the year. Of course, we will continue to monitor this and bring this back to you on a periodic basis. So with that, I would like to turn our attention to now page 7 of the presentation. Page 7 focuses on all the recycled water sales. And you'll see in the following slides, we break down that recycled water into 3 different areas. Again, similarly, here you'll see that that dotted line represents that 3-year average. The dashed line represents the budget for the 2020 year. And then the actual is in that solid line. So over here, again, you see back in April, we see this big depression as well in that year. And again, that gave us pause and tried to see how do we adjust for our sales at that time. Again, this was at the onset of the pandemic, and so we weren't sure sort of where it was. So here in our water sales, you see that we were declined in this area. We also noted that part of it could have been with the rainfall that we saw, but part of it could be pandemic, and so we're going to go into a little bit more detail on the following slides to kind of see where was those impacts seen. So if I could turn your attention now to page 8 of the presentation. 8, now the slide here refers to the refinery recycled water sales. So refinery, as you know, we had a particular analysis regarding the refineries that we shared with you back in April and May of this year. And that is where we saw the biggest hit, if you will, to our refineries. People had that stay-at-home order. They were not traveling. They were not flying. They were not using their cars. People were staying home, and we saw a big impact. But what is great to see is that we're starting to see an upward trend of those sales to the refineries in this period of time from March 2020 to September 2020. Now, with that, though, we see, that we are still depressed from our 3-year trend. Our 3-year normal pattern is, shows us slightly higher than where we are. So we're not quite back to where we anticipated to be, but we are seeing ourselves in a more positive trend. Again, we will continue to monitor our refinery sales, and we continue to have conversations. And also, to that end, I know that Suez is closely monitoring this as well and provides periodic updates to our operations team. I do also want to point out on this slide here that you see that budget kind of dips down. And again, we also made the assumption, that dash line, thank you, that you see that dip down. And again, the reason for that is that we made the assumption that we're going to see a depression in those sales in that first quarter. So July, August, and September, we anticipated seeing lower sales in that month. And we are seeing lower sales, but we're actually doing better than what we thought we would do. And so we're seeing, again, a positive picture here, but one in which we will continue to monitor and make sure that we are seeing ourselves in how we will end up for the year. Let us now turn to page 9 of the presentation. Page 9 of the presentation refers to our Title 22, our irrigation customers. There you can see that, again, we had some impact on our sales in April. Again, this kind of tacks to the point about the rainfall. Our irrigation customers don't need water if they are getting natural rainfall, if you will, to take care of that irrigation need. And so you can see we had a big depression again, also in April, returning back to our normal trend in May, but still being below budget. We took a look at our assumptions with our Title 22 sales, and we saw that we need to also make an adjustment there. There were some in which there was overlap, if you will, on some of those sales, and we tightened up that budget as well. But then you see ourselves in July, August, and September, and again, we're doing very well. We're doing better than a 3-year trend, and we're doing better than budget. And again, we will continue to monitor those things. I think largely we had a very warm summer, and so we are seeing ourselves, perhaps that we had good sales during that period of time. So let's now turn to page 10 of the presentation. And on page 10 of the presentation, this now refers to our barrier recycled water sales. And this one is a very different story. When we were talking about the water sales assumptions back in April and May of this year, there was a different story relating to the barrier. We saw that we were doing, the county was requesting more. We were able to produce that water and able to see higher deliveries, if you will, to that line. So you see that solid blue line, you can see that we're starting to do really well. And if you recall that when we actually looked at the sales there, we actually shifted some of those budgeted sales from the potable line item to the recycled line item. And so we can see that ourselves, you can see now turning to July through August, you can see that budget really increasing over the July, August, and September timeframe because of the anticipated more sales that's there. Unfortunately, we had a couple things happen in the month of August. You can see that big difference, if you will, between the 1,300 acre feet that we anticipated in August, and we did closer to 1,000, if you will. The reason for that is twofold. One is that we did have a sort of a tougher water quality in the month of August. And in that month of August, we also saw the fact that we participated, I should say, in that energy, what was it? We participated in that heat event. What, say again, Patrick?
Load shedding over at the plant due to the.
I always forget that term. Thank you so much, Patrick. Load shedding. So we actually participated in that load shedding, which of course was in the area of our barrier. But nice to see that we're starting to see that number pop back up. Again, you can see that it's trending higher in September. Again, slightly lower than our budget, but I think we were continuing to work through it. I think there was still some additional heat events in September as well. So again, I think overall what we see here for the water sales is that we're seeing ourselves where we are seeing positive trends in our water sales. Yes, we may be lower than some of our 3-year trends, but we will continue to monitor that and see ourselves where we're at. I think the adjustments that we made in our budget were appropriate, and we will, and hopefully in the case of the barrier, we will see ourselves where we're able to return to those budgeted sales that we see. So before I move on, I wanted to take a pause because the rest has to do with more the expenditure side to see if there's any questions on water sales that we can address for you before we move on.
Madam Chair, this is Director Houston. I have some questions if we're going to break at this time. Director Kwan?
Yes, Director Houston, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Margaret. I was going to hold it in, but since you put a break here, I'll ask you a few things right now. One is, well, let's look at the slide we're on right now. So just out of curiosity, what is the status of the discussions with the county on barrier injection, Patrick? I don't think we've heard anything lately as to discussions to determine better relationship with them.
There hasn't been a whole lot of discussion during COVID. The relationship, though, is good. Any issues with barrier operation really has to do with the wells that are, when you say the county, LA County, they operate and maintain them, and some of them are quite old. And anything else that would influence the amount of barrier, Margaret touched on it, would be a water quality, water quality issues from Hyperion. But as far as the well, the operation of the wells, that continues to be LA County. And our customer, the paying customer for the water is WRD. So there's three main folks in that agreement. So is there anything specific that you would want to point to, Director Houston?
Well, again, I've asked multiple times over the years to have a better dialogue with them, especially on the maintenance of these wells, so we understand what's being online, what's offline, and how that affects our injection. So I do understand during COVID things probably got a little quiet or slow or what have you, but I'm just asking again when we're going to have some dialogue with the county and have a better understanding of the wells that are in operation, what the maintenance schedule is, and so on. So I'm just going to put it out there. That's what I'd like to see at some point. I just hadn't heard anything in a while.
Yeah, I just on that note, of course, I've met with Rob Whitaker and the folks over at LA County before the COVID, and our staff, by the way, is in constant. Uzi is in constant contact with the county as it pertains to the O&M. But I'll revisit that, Director Houston, and I'd also offer that we would maybe bring something back where we can show you what kind of dialogue we have on a weekly basis. There's a lot of communication going on between the groups.
Okay, great. And I probably don't really need like a rundown of every conversation that was had, but what we really need to know is when the district's going to have a meeting of some kind to determine the status of these wells, how many are in operation, what's the maintenance schedule, because I know what we've talked about in the past is there's a number that need to be rehabbed. And I don't think the board's ever gotten a full understanding or a workshop briefing as to that. So I'll just put it there. That's the request I do have. I don't want to see that continue to get delayed. The next thing I have a question on, so back to slide number 5 on our water sales assumptions. Great, thank you. Desalted brackish, I'm assuming that's our facility over in Torrance, which I don't think we've talked lately about specifically, but what is the status of that facility, Patrick? I see that we had an assumed budget here, something like 1,150 acre feet, and yet actual is down to 124. And now our new one assumption is 864. So again, what's the status of the facility in Torrance?
Director Houston, good question. I think you're referring to the Brewer Desalter. The Brewer Desalter is up and running right now and has been for several months. In fiscal year 1920, you'll recall it did have quite a few operational problems, which were fixed. And it's been online, I want to say, pretty much since April, as we show in our monthly reports to the board during our operations report. And I think in the budgeting, we had a more cautious assumption, Margaret, because of looking back at the history, we seem to budget high and then much lower. But right now, it's in a good place. As far as Markov and I and Uzi, we're going to bring back a sort of workshop on this as to the long-term viability of that Brewer Desalter in terms of any kind of expansion or where do we go, moving forward. So that's staff has been, they've given that to the board before, but they're going to give an updated workshop on that. Hopefully that answers the question.
And if I could just also add, Director Houston, if you turn to page 35 of your packet, it actually will show you where we are trending this year for the Brewer Desalter. Okay. So we actually are having actual sales of 215 for the first 3 months to a budget of 216. So hopefully that continues to stay for the duration of the year, but you can see that lower assumption is one I think that at least the 3 months show that we are going to be able to achieve it. But again, after Patrick's point, there's more information on that to follow.
Okay, perfect. No, that's really good because again, if I'm seeing these numbers, I see we made some really ambitious assumptions last year. Obviously, that didn't pan out. So I think that's really important to track it and understand what is the status of that facility at this time. And then the last thing I have right now is, recycled water, same chart right here, recycled water it seems like we have been pretty flat, at least with where we've been sitting and projecting around this 34, 35, 36,000 acre foot per year. You know, what is the status of increasing that at some point? Because this seems like that's usually the number we've been hovering at for a number of years.
Yeah, well, you're speaking to new customers. Obviously, we have all of the low-hanging fruit with the refineries and the barrier. That's about 80% of our sales, roughly. And as we pursue projects like the PV lateral, which is more in the order of 200 acre feet, we have several smaller customers, and we continue to look at Kenneth Hahn Park, as you know, and try to get funding and make sure we have all the agreements in place to extend our recycled water sales out to what is no longer the lower hanging fruit. So we're trying to increase those sales. We are adding customers like Stadium, which is a smaller amount of recycled water use per year each year. But I expect to see it steadily increase. But the four big customers that we have are the mainstay of the recycled water. But we're working, like I said, on PV lateral, Kenneth Hahn, and others.
Okay. Okay, great. What is going on with Palos Verdes lateral?
Yeah, one of the things, Director, I should mention, that's why we'll be bringing to the board here, I think in December, the results of the recycled water master plan. That hasn't been done for 10 years. So that's going to give us, just with the question you're asking, where are the potential other uses for recycled water going forward? How will we be able to increase it? In regards to PV lateral, as you know, we have been working with the City of Torrance, City Council, staff, and I've been directly involved with all of those meetings. I've also had a series of meetings, virtual meetings with the community, which have resulted in very, very positive outcome. In terms of the main objection to the project is just the siting of the pump station at Lago Seco Park. And we got a letter of very strong support from the Homeowners Association. In fact, I was in communication with them this morning. We're going to have another chat with them and the City of Torrance next week. But they've sent a letter of support and copying the mayor and some of the city council members that they're in support of the project with the location of the pump station that that's currently under consideration, slightly moved from where we had it before. So I know Barkev, I don't see, yeah, Barkev is on the line here. We're scheduled to go to executive session here in the next few weeks. And I'm hoping for a final determination, but it looks very promising at this point. Barkev, did you want to add anything to that, please?
I think you pretty much covered it, Patrick. We're meeting with city staff next week to prepare for those meetings you mentioned. One with the community that has recently provided a letter of support. Thanks a lot to your efforts, I think, with your engagement with the community and their leadership. And then also the next executive meeting that's coming up late this month at the city.
Okay, great. Thank you. I don't have any more questions at this moment. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Doug, Mr. Solomon, you have a question? I saw you at the chat. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, you covered some of it, but when there's maintenance and the wells are down, does that have more saltwater incursion coming in? How do they handle not pumping as much barrier water?
Yeah, good question, Mr. Solomon. So what if we bring that chart, well, I think there was a barrier graph back there. When we have, there's a couple of ways that the water is made up. It can be made up with, if it's not recycled water, which is shown in this chart here, this slide, page 10, slide 10, then the balance can be made up with potable water to maintain the hydrological barrier to keep the seawater in. So there's always water going in there, and it's not, even if there's a few wells down at any time, it's a massive amount of water that's going in from 12 to 15 million gallons a day. So there's no seawater intrusion, but if it's not 100% recycled water or close to it, it'll be a mix of potable and recycled water. So I hope that answers your question. So we maintain the barrier one way or another, recycled or wholly, or recycled potable combined. But we were always shooting to get it to be as much recycled as possible.
It answers my question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You okay? All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Doug. Next one.
So let me, Director Kwon, if I can continue with the presentation on page 11.
Yeah, please do.
So I wanted to also share with the board and to our guests the review of our program expenditures. Again, we make a lot of assumptions, based off of information, based off of contracts, to be able to do certain things during the year. And I did have a conversation with each manager just to kind of see where do we see some savings that are here. So the first one I wanted to note was that we're going to see some savings as the board did make a decision in the summer, I believe it was July, to defer the annual water harvest until next October. And so there are some savings that we'll see from that particular program. That's something we did budget for, but we were, making some determination about what it was. And again, a board decision was made in July regarding that. Of course, we all know that many of our travel for conferences have gone to a virtual format. So our costs have been reduced in that particular area for both directors and employees. And we do have our travel report later in the board packet, actually the next item, that will show you that we are spending much less than what we anticipated. And so, again, we will continue to monitor that for the foreseeable future. I think, I'm hearing even conferences out into February are going virtual. So we will see some savings, of course, in our travel costs. In the area of our in-person events that we had, one of the things that we'll see here is that in our education programs, we're seeing a couple things happen. One is, of course, we're not bringing school children over to our treatment plant to get that education. We found a new way to engage with them. And so, of course, the cost associated with bus transportation is not a cost that we're incurring at this time and will not incur, of course, until we get back to in-person events. Second is that the decision by the Metropolitan Water District to defer its solar cut program for the year has also caused a small savings, if you will, to the program in the tune of about $11,000. And then, of course, with our hiring deferrals, again, we made a decision during the budget time that there are certain positions that while they are needed, we are going to defer them until the new calendar year. And so as things are happening, we are continuing to monitor our labor budget. We did have a retirement, we just had someone leave. And so, there are some, savings from that as well. Those are not things that necessarily we planned for, but those are savings that we're going to see. But we are continuing to move forward and making sure that we hire those staff at the appropriate time. Turning now to page 12. I also wanted just to share with you, and you've heard a lot of these updates already from the conservation group, the water efficiency group, as well as our education group, about how they've taken their current programs, where we were continuing to meet with them in person. How are we going to continue to deliver our message? How are we going to continue to educate to our public on those items? And so we've been able to convert those education and outreach events to these virtual formats. A good example of that was our summer splash that happened during the summer, and then the water lab that they've just kicked off right now. Also too, you heard an update Wednesday from Janelle about those virtual field trips and how we are engaging with students still to be able to provide that curriculum to the students. And in the area of water efficiency, we've been able to reimagine, if you will, those programs. You heard a little bit mentioned yesterday, again on Wednesday from EJ regarding our rain barrel distribution. We can't have those in-person events where we're gathering, in a parking lot to hand out those rain barrels. And so they're working on a way to still be able to deliver rain barrels to those that are interested. And then, of course, the board heard in September about the Cash for Kitchen and finding an online portal in order to be able to continue to be able to move forward on that grant-funded program, and in a way that does, again, not have any additional cost to us, but in a way that we can continue to do that. And then you just heard again on Wednesday from EJ about the change in save. You know, we were making great progress with that, but we wanted to see what we can do. And so we're changing how we're marketing to our constituents in those, you know, disadvantaged communities to be able to get those rebates to them. And again, the board is considering an amendment to that agreement this month. So let me now turn to page 13, which is the final page of the slide of this presentation. And this is just, again, what COVID-related expenditures have we seen in this fiscal year? And there are three that I can sort of identify for you. Of course, the board is very familiar with the first one there. They made a decision, I believe, in July, and that we ran that broadcast of that public service announcement from August 7th through the 16th. We had about 5,000 spots that were put out onto the network. On the second item, we do have some new signage here around the building that talks about wearing your face mask, having social distancing, if you're in the kitchen, about the parameters that you need to follow in that. So for those few individuals that do make it into the office, that we are making sure that the messaging is appropriate and it's out there for them. And then finally, we did actually hear from our operations team how we are seeing with one of our, one in particular, that they are experiencing a higher cost with the reduction of the refinery usage is actually causing a sort of a scarcity of a particular chemical that we use. And as a result of that, they are having a surcharge on top of that. Small amount of dollars, not a big amount to things, but I just wanted to point out that there are very few examples where we're seeing where we're having added costs. This just happens to be one of them. And with that, that takes me to the end of the presentation and happy to answer any additional questions.
Madam Chair, I have a couple questions.
Yeah, please do.
Thank you. Margaret, again, thank you. And if you go back to slide 11 on that, program expenditure savings. Now this doesn't tell us like the amount of money. It just tells us some savings occurred apparently. Obviously travel and conferences, that's probably very small in the big scheme of everything, and it's all been canceled. But on the hiring deferrals, I had not heard we'd done some deferrals. I do see we're running ads to hire people. So I guess if somebody could let me know at least what are we leaving open? What are we holding off? Because this is in this report, and maybe how much money we're approximately saving at this time.
Let me clarify my first point, and then I can turn it over to Patrick if he'd like to add anything more. This was the planned hiring deferrals that we talked about. So when we talked about back in, I believe it was April timeframe, we talked about that there were certain positions, mostly in the area of our engineering area, that we were going to defer to the hiring date. We had open positions, but rather than hiring them to start July 1, we were going to have them start in January 2021. So again, we're monitoring those the needs of that particular area before we sort of put them out there. You are right. We have recently posted a couple of sorry about that. Recently posted a couple positions, and these are in accordance with, if you will, the sort of the planned ones that we had. So one of them is a facility operations coordinator. That was a deferred position that we're starting to hire now, so hopefully to start by the new year. And then the water quality and regulatory compliance supervisor is another one that was also start January, and we're starting that recruitment now.
Okay. Did you have anything to add, Patrick?
I think that pretty well covered it, but I think you said we did discuss this, Director Houston, back in when we presented the budget in April. In fact, I believe it was in each of the presentations. But the thought was, and what we conveyed as we were trying to assess the impacts of COVID and looking for various cost containment measures. Margaret, what was the total that we presented to the board in terms of cost containment, the dollar amount?
Cost containment was about $5.4 million, of which, yes, hiring deferrals was one portion of that.
Right, that's what was presented to the board. So since then, obviously, we had a couple of people that left over in EJ's group, and we're now the position of supervisor for water combines. That's Uzi's old position, had not been filled, so we're recruiting for that. See if there's anything else I'd like to add. And we've had a couple of retirements. I just found out about one. We have a couple of staff retiring. Found out about one yesterday, so we'll have to start planning for that recruitment. So those weren't in the picture when we did the budget back in April. These are subsequent to the budget being adopted. Do you have any other questions, Director Houston?
No, I would request actually that this report, perhaps when it's published for the board meeting, if you guys could add in maybe some numbers here. How much do we save on the water harvest? How much do we save on not doing some of that travel? You know, how much are we saving on these bus transportation tour trips, and how much we're saving thus far on the hiring situation? I think that would be a lot more clear, because I see you guys obviously put in here how much money we've spent lately in the midst of COVID, but you haven't told us, you know, how much in dollars we're saving. So I think that would be a really good idea. So thank you.
I'm happy to do that, Director Houston. It's just, you know, we're you know, at the time that we're looking at this, we're barely gotten September closed. So, you know, part of the about the travel, it's really hard to anticipate, but I can certainly put my best foot forward on that one. Annual water harvest, of course, is a pretty well number. It's just to let you know, it's $145,000 that we budgeted for that one.
Oh, wait a minute.
And the cost with the budget, 145,000.
145,000 for the water harvest?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, so that's good to know. Okay.
And then on the bus transportation, I can just make the assumption that we'll be virtual for the rest of the year. And then, you know, if that's the case, then, you know, there's some things there. Wanted to kind of stay away a little bit at this moment with from the specific dollar amounts, because of course we do our budget versus actual. You'll hear our first quarter report next month, and we'll certainly can share those numbers as well, but I'm happy to include them in this presentation with an estimate.
Okay, good. And I do understand that, Margaret. And even when I look at this, like, I mean, we would know probably what would have been the ballpark with the tours that were scheduled had we been providing bus, right? Or
sure.
What would we have been spending on Solar Cup that apparently now is deferred?
Yes.
Certainly water harvest, that's an easy one. And also the virtual conferences. So obviously you would probably look at all the conferences that, you know, got changed or canceled and changed to virtual, and, you know, what we would have probably spent on that, at least for directors participating, because a number of us participated virtually, versus, you know, the actual cost, which, by the way, yeah, they're really inexpensive. I mean, now you're talking like a couple $100 to go to these virtual online conferences, which has been great. So that's all I would ask. I just think it would be good to see some numbers. So to the best of your ability. So thank you, Margaret.
And let me just clarify. Would you like me to project out through the end of the fiscal year, or just where we would have been through September?
Well, since this said through September, let's keep it through September. Let's do that.
Can do. I will do that.
Because I'd like to see, obviously, when this is, at least when it's published for the board meeting, you know, this could be an adjustment that's made. So yeah.
I can make that adjustment. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Margaret. Oh, just on the same note though, you know, on the slide it says like hiring referral. So will you tell me which position we have not, a hire, or what is this with deferrals about?
Yeah, the deferrals, like I said, was presented to the board back in April, and I have Michelle Green, who can actually give you the positions. Michelle, if you can turn your Microphone on,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, directors and Patrick and the board. With regard to the hiring deferrals, we deferred, if I'm not mistaken, a number of positions to a January 1 start date for saving purposes. And some of those positions were an engineer 2 position, I believe an engineer 3 position, a facilities maintenance coordinator position, and also a water quality and environmental compliance supervisor position. So those are the positions that essentially we deferred because of, for purposes of budget savings. Those are the ones that I can recall.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Thank you very much.
You're
Any
welcome.
other questions for Michelle or for Margaret on this page? Okay, none. Margaret, do you have one more page you're gonna talk about? Program, page 12. Are we done with this item?
Yeah, we're done, Chair, we're done with item 7A, and we're now ready for 6A, I'm sorry. We're now ready for 6B.
Yeah.
And of course, 6B is, as required by our admin code, we report on actually 4 components for internal reporting purposes of our finances, including cash and investments. And we have Mary Ann, I see, already. She loves doing this one. So Mary Ann, you should take it away, please. Thank you.
I do, Patrick, I do. Thank you. And good, well, I guess it's good afternoon, directors. I will take the next couple of items under the monthly financial report. This covers the reports as of September 2020. Beginning on page 21 of your packet is the September demand list. As you recall, these are the payments that we make for operating and conducting district business throughout the entire month. If you were to scan down to page 27, if I could have you look there, you will see the total demands for the month of September were at 18.3 million. Comparing that to last month in August, we had about 19 million that we spent for the month of August. So not much of a change, a little bit of a decrease, about 700,000. And I can point out one item that seemed pretty obvious. If you were to look at the very bottom of the page, you'll see our metropolitan water bill that we pay each month for the purchases that we make. That was at 12.1 million. Last month when I looked at that, it was at 12.8. So there was about a $700,000 drop there. Other than that, that's all I have on the demands. And I'll pause to see if there's any questions before I move on to cash and investments.
Hi there, Madam Chair. I have a few questions, if it's okay.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay,
Please.
thank you. Thank you, Mary Ann. As always, you know, I really do look through these things, and sometimes stuff catches my eye. And so I did want to ask a few questions real quick. Let's see, starting with page 24 of our packet, there's an item here for Heal the Bay, community sponsorship of $2,500. What is that?
I'm gonna look that up to see. I believe it is a community sponsorship. Let's see. I'm gonna look at, see if I can pick it up on my budget versus actual report.
Sure.
Sorry, it might take, it's great to have technology here, but it does take me a few minutes just to get into the file.
It's no worry, and I have the check number if you need the check number. I don't know if that makes it faster.
Okay.
Yeah, Mary Ann, while you're looking that up, so normally in non-COVID times, sponsorship for Heal the Bay, usually the dinner, Director Houston, which of course is not happening. So they had, I think, one of a few alternate types of events. I believe this one's to help sponsor beach cleanup. I think you said in an earlier committee meeting we were going to participate in it. So we're one of the sponsors. Some of that sponsorship money went to this, and since they're not having their dinner, went to this particular cleanup in August. It was August and September. That's what I recall from that. Were you able to find it, Marianne?
I was not. I did see that we did budget actually 10,000 for
Right.
Heal the Bay for the year, and as Patrick mentioned, that was 2,500 for this first payment.
Right. And there's an outside chance that maybe by the end of the year, the current fiscal year, if COVID were completely to clear up, that they may do the actual dinner, but it's looking less and less likely.
Okay, so I am confused because you said that I said I was going to go to a beach cleanup. Is that what I heard?
I think when you were talking to, and maybe Craig Cadwaller is on the line here, can refresh my memory. We were talking about this Heal the Bay event over a couple of months. And it's my recollection, Director Houston, that you said you plan to be participating.
No. Well, no, because I think I mentioned that I heard beach cleanups are happening, but I didn't specifically. I was going to this one just because we're a sponsor. So just to be very clear for everybody, yeah, I didn't use this sponsorship for anything. As a matter of fact, I was surprised to see we gave any money, even though I know it's in our budget. But the board wasn't aware that we were participating. At least I wasn't. So actually, it brings me to my next question. I'm on the next page, on page 25. At the bottom of the page, there's Palos Verdes Estates Chamber of Commerce District sponsorship, also for $2,500. What's that about?
While I think they're looking for an answer, I wanted just to clarify too that we do actually have multiple sponsorship budgets. One is the ones that you saw that was in under 5A, where they are director sponsorships. They need to come before the board
Right.
that you see there. But we also have district sponsorships. Perhaps that first one, that Heal the Bay, should have said district sponsorship because it did not come out of that budget.
Okay.
So that something we can correct on our side. And we do have sort of ones that we've identified. And then we have sort of a dollar amount for other things that may come up during the year. And so the first one was, like as mentioned, was the Heal the Bay beach cleanup. And it's my understanding that the second one was Leadership Peninsula is the program that's being sponsored there, and we will have an opportunity, I believe, to participate and be a speaker at some point during the program.
Oh, okay. So that one, the Palos Verdes Estates, that's what you're talking about, Margaret?
That is correct. The second one is that Leadership Peninsula.
Is that one that the board approved, or is
no,
that
came out of the district sponsorship or other sponsorship budget? So.
Okay, got it. And so that's why I guess I was confused, because we're spending this money, and off the top of my head, I don't know when the event is, or what it's about, or who's going. So I mean, I don't know if you can answer that now. I mean, what's this event for?
The Leadership Peninsula is is similar to the ones that you see in the beach cities, where they have a sort of a year-long program. Yeah. And they learn about different things that pertain to that particular area. In this case, it's up at the peninsula. So who are the cities, I believe, is one of the discussion items. Another one is about sort of the resources that are around there. So that's where West Basin would come in to just talk about West Basin and how it impacts, if you will, the peninsula.
Okay, so this is through the general manager's office, I guess.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, got it. Maybe there's a way to identify things on these that says something like that. GM's office or something.
Yeah,
we can make that change.
Yeah, because when I saw this, I was completely confused because I don't remember anybody bringing forward a sponsorship request from Palos Verdes Estates Chamber of Commerce And certainly $2,500 is way more expensive than a Chamber of Commerce membership, which I see we do those, of course. So I think that would be really important. And then, of course, I'm assuming staff's going to be, whomever from staff will be the presenter. So I have a couple more questions real quick. One of them is, also back to page 24, there's this place called Innovative Discovery for Legal Services. What is that about? I've seen that over the course of the months, and I don't understand what that's about.
So I can,
Well, go ahead.
oh, go ahead. I was going to say, that actually has to do with one of our litigation that we're under. This has to do with the standby charge. It was an arrangement that we had done with through Wilmer Hale as well as Steve's office.
Okay.
I can speak to that, Margaret, as well. It's a consultant who's assisting in the document management of that litigation, which we're close to concluding. This may be the last invoice that we have to pay for those services.
Okay, got it. That's very helpful. I'll just say two more things. One is because I know that we have a lot of different legal firms working for us, and I don't know to what extent it can be identified what they're doing or not, but for what it's worth, there's a lot of legal firms that are working for West Basin at, up and down volumes of money. I've certainly noticed that. I haven't brought it up, but I've noticed it. So, maybe Steve and Margaret and Pat, there's a way to identify better what these funds are for. I understand sometimes it might be confidential, but I just think we could be better on this. So I'm not gonna, I don't need a response right now. Just maybe you guys can come back with some thoughts or put it in writing to the board. I just think it would be better for us to understand all these legal firms, what they're paying, what they're doing on our behalf. And then the last thing, and this is just more of a comment, I do see that, in the last month we spent $42,150 to Sheville Engineering. And so I'm sure that's on the contract that's going through to the end of the year, but as everybody knows, I did not support extending that contract. So I just want to be clear on that. But we did spend $42,000 in the past month on him. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions for Marianne? Any other comments from directors? Okay, please.
May I move on to the cash and investments, Director Kwan?
Sure, please do.
Okay, all right. Again, the cash and investment report begins on page 28 of your packet. I'll just take a few minutes to go over this with you. You can see on page 28 at the left top corner our cash investments, which includes all of our operating cash investments, and this is at market value at September 30th, 2020, was $77.3 million. This was an increase over last month where we had about 1.5 million less. So again, an increase of 1.5 million. A couple of reasons. I think you heard when we were talking about demands that we had spent about $700,000 less this month as compared to the prior month. In addition, we did receive some reimbursement on some costs related to the LA Stadium, and we did receive some funds for the DAC grant during the month. So all those increased our balance overall. On page 29 of the packet, you will see the graphs that we show our not only our credit quality, but also our maturity to distribution or duration, excuse me, based on our maturity dates. And then on the following page, on page 30, is a recap of all the transactions that happened during the month. This shows the investments that were bought and sold during the month of September. And then the last couple of pages, pages 31 through 33, is a recap, if you will, but in detail of each of the investments we have, and that is for your information as well. If there's any questions on cash investments, I'd be happy to answer. Otherwise, I'll move on to water sales.
questions for Mary Ann? Okay, seeing none, thank you.
All right, moving on to the monthly water sales. I think Margaret did a great job earlier, so I'll just make a few comments, particularly to the month of September. I'll concentrate on. So on page 34 of your packet, at the very top of the page is our imported water sales, and you could see in that red column that is our actuals for 2021. And for the month of September, you'll see that we sold 9,792 acre feet. That was a slight drop from last year, September, of about 199 acre feet. However, as Margaret pointed out in her presentation, it is above the budget that we have for the month of 8847. And that was about 945 acre feet above budget, or about 10.7%. And moving down to the bottom of that page, these are the imported barrier sales. I think Patrick mentioned earlier, this is injected into the West Coast barrier as well as the Dominguez Gap barrier. And happy to report that in the month of September, our number was 398 acre feet. That did exceed both our prior year sales and slightly exceeded our budget, not by much, but it's positive. So moving on to the next page, these are our recycled water sales at the top. Again, we did talk about that a little bit in detail earlier, but I'll just highlight the month of September. As you can see from the graph here, that purple line is for the actual for September. We did better than last year, September, by about 143 acre feet or 4.5%. And we are trending above budget. Budget for the month of September was 3215, so that was about 116 acre feet, what we had budgeted for. And then moving down, and I'll just make one note, I think Margaret hit upon it, but I'll just make a note that most of the primary reason that we were above the budget was because of the refineries. And looking in detail of that, I can see that with the refineries, we did have increased sales compared to last year for the Chevron nitrified and the low pressure sales as well. Moving down to the bottom of that page, you will see the sales we had to the brewer desalter. I think Director Houston had asked some questions. You'll see that we are right on budget and of course exceeded last year, which wasn't hard to do because we had no sales last year for the month of September. But that concludes my report on the monthly water sales, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions, directors? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to the next item, right?
Actually, there's one more report, Director Kwan. That's the travel and expense.
Yes.
Again, not a lot.
Yeah, fine. 60.
Not a lot to report here. Yes, as Margaret had touched upon this and Director Houston talked about, there is not a lot going on, just a few registrations you can see. So we're doing very well compared to budget. And on the following page is the executive management and staff travel. Again, not a lot going on, and you can see we are at about $1,136, almost $37 compared to a budget of $150. So
big savings, huh? All right. Any question on 6B? Any question on this item? Okay, none. Okay, so we should move on to 6C, tuition reimbursement process.
Yeah, thank you, Chairwoman Kwan. So item 6B, this is packet page number 38 in your board packet. The district has a tuition reimbursement policy for its employees, and part of that is covered under Admin Code Section 3-4.216. Part of that requirement for getting reimbursement is a pre-approval of course material along with the expected and anticipated costs for any given degree or educational opportunity that the staff might be pursuing. And I recently got a request, and it's signed by the general manager. I got a request that is higher than my general manager's authority for pre-approval, and I consulted with General Counsel O'Neill, and he suggested that this is uncharted territory, that it's above the 50,000 limit. for the general manager spending authority, to bring it back to the board to just make sure that you're aware of this new territory. And Margaret, I think you wanted to say a few words about this. Margaret Moshe.
Yes, so as Patrick mentioned, on page 38, we do talk about our tuition reimbursement. And there are two things I wanted just to highlight for you. As Patrick mentioned, we do have a section within the Administrative Code, section 34216, that does talk about tuition reimbursement. And we do show an excerpt of that portion of the Administrative Code in the board packet for you, starting on the bottom of page 38 and then going on to page 39. And in it, it talks about a number of things, including, again, about the pre-approval, and that the pre-approval needs to be done before the coursework begins. The other requirements that you see there are more as it relates to the kind of things that we will be paying for. So it will pay for a bachelor's or a master's degree, or associated examination fees for professional licenses and certificates. But that what's not included is that the postgraduate coursework, such as a doctoral or a second master's degree, is not eligible for reimbursement. So we do have a form that is completed by the employee. It is reviewed by the manager, HR, and general manager. And as Patrick mentioned, he did receive a request that was over $50,000. Now, there's nothing mentioned in this particular administrative code section that talks about a limit necessarily, but what I will refer you to is to a section within our procurement policy, and our procurement policy states that the general manager has authority up to $50,000, and above $50,000 that we should get board approval. And so we did wanted to reach out to district council to get his thoughts on how do we reconcile this language that's here that's silent as to dollar amount and a section on procurement where we're going out and buying a good or buying a service, so not necessarily a reimbursement. And so he suggested that we would bring it to the board for your awareness. The other requirements that you see there relating to the tuition reimbursement is really incumbent upon the employee. The employee must, maintain a certain grade level. It talks about the types of costs that would be reimbursed, and that should the employee leave before, in this case, it says there on page 39 under number 9, that says if an employee voluntarily leaves district employment within 24 months of completion, the entire reimbursement must be repaid to the district. So just wanted to kind of educate you a little bit about our tuition reimbursement policy, but also just to bring to your attention. And again, as Patrick made mention of, we wanted to make you aware, see if you have any questions or comments on it, and certainly Steve can also share as well. And with that, I'll turn it back to you.
Sure, I can jump in, Margaret, and I think Patrick and Margaret captured the issue. And in a nutshell, our procurement requirements in the administrative code have limits on the authority of the general manager, and the procurement code is intended for procurement of the acquisition of materials, supplies, contracting, consultant services, etc. And it doesn't really capture this tuition reimbursement issue because as you look at the tuition reimbursement language, you'll see that it vests in the general manager the authority to approve the proposed coursework, and the reimbursement would follow thereafter. So we identified this inconsistency or this gap in the administrative code and wanted to bring it to the attention so that the board knows about this. And also, this may be something we want to consider at a further administrative committee meeting if we want to review the tuition reimbursement policy in its entirety, as well as include a discussion of kind of expenditure authority within this process.
Any questions? I do have, actually, I do like to take up Steve's suggestion that we should revisit this particular item or the 3-4.26. I think the last time I remembered this is a long time ago. So I really want to see it being reviewed. And I know that we don't have a limit here, for anyone that's taking the course. Is it common to do that in other tuition reimbursement process? I know that it costs more now, but is the districts to pay for the education if it's $100,000 and over? I'm just making my number. So I actually would like to have a discussion on this particular item. So, but now I guess this is not an action item. So now the question is that this particular employee is requesting a tuition reimbursement pre-approval. So how should pick up on this one, Steve?
Well, if as the code is written, if the request for reimbursement meets the criteria, then it should be approved. Perhaps if we revisit this issue and we can amend it to put more perhaps constraints on it in terms of dollar limits, we could put that in place, and thus moving forward from that time, we could have imposed some limits on it.
Okay, so at this point, how to say that? I know that I think the general manager is asking us or the board what happened if the what you call the request, the reimbursement pre-approval request is over 50, but I'm uncomfortable to do that unless I know the amount. I don't know, is it legal to discuss the amount here now, or is it for another discussion?
I'd recommend it be for another discussion and until we can give you the details on it and perhaps make an action item. And perhaps if I work with Patrick and Margaret, we can come back with a recommendation for changes to the policy moving forward that would include some type of financial limit, perhaps.
May I speak on that, please, Steve? Hello?
Sure, that's up to the chair, not to me.
Oh, I'm sorry. May I please speak on that, Chairwoman Kwan?
Yes, you can.
I'm sorry about that. I was just referencing and piggybacking off of what Steve had mentioned with regard to review of the policy. We have a committee that consists of 5 employees or staff from the HR department and finance, where we regularly, and administration as well, where we regularly review various sections of the admin code, specifically the section that I'm responsible for, the human resources section. And so at some point we will be bringing some amendments to that section of the code to the board. And one of those will be the tuition reimbursement policy. We have been looking at this policy and have made amendments to it in the past. And essentially, this is one of those policies that we are looking at making some changes to with respect to limits on how much can be reimbursed. We did a survey, HR conducted a survey of other agencies, and you will find tuition reimbursement to be common in a lot of agencies, water districts as well, and many other public agencies. But we did find that a number of those agencies set limits with regard to how much can be reimbursed per year. For example, I believe Metropolitan has a limit of $9,000, and that was the highest, one of the highest that we saw. Other agencies might limit it to what the tax implications, I think, which is $5,250, because there's certain tax implications that also become involved with tuition reimbursement in certain circumstances. So again, some of these agencies have a limit of $3,000. It varies across the board. So that is something that we're looking at, changing the policy to be more in line with maybe what other districts are doing. So it is something that we're currently reviewing.
Thank you, Michelle. So when can you bring this to the board for discussion?
Yeah, I would say, Chairman Kwan, I'll take this, Michelle. We're pretty close, I think, to bringing back several admin code updates. It's not just putting a limit in this case on the tuition reimbursement, but obviously the conflict with the procurement limit for the general manager's expenditure. There's several cleanup things that probably need to be addressed, and I think we can bring it back in Chairwoman in November.
Okay. Yes. And meanwhile, what do we do with this particular situation, this particular employee staff peer approval? And are we going to wait until then?
Well, I was going to defer to Steve on this, as he said, as written right now, the language, and if the person is eligible, then the pre-approval can be approved as is. But under the current code. Steve?
Yeah, that'd be my recommendation, that the staff should follow the code as drafted, and then once we can, if the board chooses to make amendments, staff would operate under the new regulations if they are generated.
Okay, so this is information item. So what do you want the board to do with this particular item at this point? Director Gray, you want to speak?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Director Deere?
I'm fine, thank you.
But then, Pat, don't you still need approval to do this one, because your authority is only up to $50,000? So tell me.
I think Director Houston wants to speak.
Yes, Director Houston, please.
Hi, Director or Chair Kwan. Wow, what an interesting predicament we find ourselves in. So I would advocate we wait until we get some analysis on this. And the only thing I wanted to say is, Steve and Pat, when you bring this back to the board, like historically, how many times and at what cost points have we provided tuition to folks? That would be very helpful for us, as well as what those other agency models may be, as Michelle Green alluded to, so we can make a really good decision here. I will say that, I'll just say it now, I'm very leery that, up to $50,000 would be under one person's ability for a tuition reimbursement. So I think we have to look at that. That needs to be a different process. And also, of course, maybe it's a little tricky too, because, confidentially, we don't know who's requesting these things, but separately, this needs to be a policy discussion, and we need to address this. So that's what I would recommend, is you guys bring it back to us, but please bring us historical at the agency. So thank you.
Okay. All right. Any more other comments?
Chairwoman Kwan, you'd asked me what I think I've gotten direction. Although Steve, your recommendation was to follow the code as written until we change it.
Yes, and as I interpret it, the $50,000 is for procurement of under Part 5 of our code, which is procurement of materials and services, and this would fall outside of that. So until we put a dollar limit on, if this request meets all the requirements, my recommendation would be to approve, because that's what our code says at this point. But it's good that we've identified this, and we'll certainly bring it forward in November so the board can consider how to amend it moving forward.
But this is not an action item at this point. So
correct.
And then, and then I do want a little bit more information. Could we kind of bring it back, or have a little bit more information and how much we have to know the amount, how much we're approving? We don't have the number here.
Oh,
Yeah,
no, this is not before the board for action at this point. As your
yeah,
code is drafted, this is the ministerial or administrative act by the general manager under his authority.
yes. So, so what do you want the board to do at this point? I mean, he's asking about authority to approve this particular tuition, reimbursement pre-approval request, and it's not an action item, and we're supposed to give him some kind of authority to do that, but I don't. But then, first, it's not an action item, and second, we don't have an amount. So I know, Steve, you said we should move forward with that, but then the general manager is asking a question here. So what do you suggest us to do now then?
Yeah, I want to be clear. We're not here. This is not agendized to request board action. The general manager and I looked at this situation, and we identified that the tuition reimbursement policy does not impose any kind of financial limit, while at the same time requiring the general manager to evaluate and make a decision on tuition reimbursement. And we identified that what he's dealing with now is a situation where there really is no specific guidelines, but we can look to our procurement policy, which is specific as to acquiring materials and services, and that has a hard limit, but no such limit exists in the tuition reimbursement scenario. So the purpose of this information item was to bring it to the board's attention that the general manager is making this decision, and also to request guidance, which I think we've gotten, to bring this back in the form of a report to the board on an overall look at the tuition reimbursement policy.
I understand. I understand that, but in a way, how to say that, is kind of confusing, that because the general manager have to sign off that reimbursement pre-approval request, but it's over $50,000 over his authority. I understand exactly what you're talking about, but so it's okay without board approval, he could still sign off something that's over $50,000. That's my, kind of my question. I understand what you're saying. And it's nothing in the tuition reimbursement thing that has a limit. But again, right, he have to sign that off, but it's over that limit. So that is where my delight is.
Yeah, this action is, or this item has been agendized on, frankly, on my recommendation, that I think the prudent thing to do would be to let the board know about this situation, where he is tasked with making a determination without a financial limit or guideline. He's in that position now, and I thought it was prudent to let the board know that, and to also recommend to the board that we've identified essentially a gap in some of our administrative processes that should be addressed. And I'm thankful that there seems to be consensus from the board to revisit this issue and correct this kind of gap in the process.
Yes, I most certainly understand. So right now, so he could still sign this off because it's over $50,000 without board approval. I think this is maybe the bottom, I guess the core of my question.
Yes.
So it's okay. It's okay to do that. So
right now, that's consistent with what we have in the code, correct?
Okay, all right. If that's what you said. Thank you, General Counsel. Thank you. So any more other questions on this particular item?
No, I would just say, Chairwoman, good discussion and really good input, and we'll bring the requested information back, requested by yourself and Director Houston, back. Shoot for November, to look at things going forward and clean up some of these, or bring for discussion some of the updates and changes to the admin code that may be needed. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's necessary. Thank you very much. Thank you. So if no more question on this item, we're moving to 6D.
Yeah, 6D, this is the last of the information calendar items. And this, before I hand this over to Steve, stemmed from some discussions at the Finance and Admin Committee meeting back on September 11th, where the staff provided a required annual disclosure of reimbursement report for fiscal year 1920, which is attached here, and covers any expenditure above $100 to an employee or a board member that's greater than $100 has to be listed in this report. And as a result of the discussions and a direction from Director Williams, we're asked to get more background information based on those discussions, but essentially boiled down to the 4 questions that you see in the background. So Steve, I'd like you to please start this item for me. Thank you.
Steve, before you start, could I just make a really quick comment on this, because I think the item is concerning me. So the first question will be, enlighten me. I don't remember this annual disclosure of reimbursement report was ever. Do we always put it on the agenda to be discussed before prior years? I don't remember that. Or maybe it's just attachment to many reports.
Yeah, there's a government code requirement that any reimbursements, or I should say all reimbursements, be posted on an annual basis. And the district's been doing that since the requirement began. I'm not sure when government code section 53065.5 was enacted, but it's been around for a while. It's part of a transparency process to post or publish all reimbursements that public agencies engage in.
Okay, all right. So so it has been on, as a report. It has been done before, right? Yes.
Yes, Director Kwana can answer that question. Typically, we bring that in usually in August or September of each year,
Okay.
and it's usually been under the information consent items.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, Steve, why don't you take it away, and then I had comment after your comment then. Thank you. Steve,
Steve, you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The statute became effective 1995, so it's been around for quite a while. I was just looking at that statute online, but to address the first question presented is, what is the code of conduct as it pertains to director travel? The code of conduct, as you know, is begins at section 2-1.306 of the admin code, and there is a section that begins at 2-1.306 subsection L, as in Lewis, that talks about expense reimbursement. And it's kind of generalized language about expense reimbursement, and sets forth some of the basic policies of the district's expenditures. And I'm just going to pull it up now. The travel and other expenses are allowed when they are reasonably necessary to represent the interests of the district. And they should provide for a reasonable level of comfort and convenience, but sound judgment is to be exercised to ensure the lowest overall reasonable cost to the district. It goes on to say that all travel arrangements, including airfare, lodging, and car rental, should be made through a district employee with prepayment whenever possible. And that there's some more language about ensuring that travel is conducted at the lowest reasonably available cost to the district. So that's one section of the code that addresses expenditures for travel and the kind of policies inherent in travel. And then it also gets into a little more specific and gets into authorized expenses, and it identifies authorized expenses as normally including lodging, hotel, business meals, transportation, conference registration, etc. And it does go on to say that for authorized expenses, they should be placed on the district credit card. And that is, of course, something that I don't believe directors have. I think the district credit cards are with the staff, which suggests that any kind of booking for travel, a conference, etc., should be on the district credit card. It does, however, say that, and it says whenever possible, district credit cards should be used. It also goes on to say that if, however, a private credit card is used, a director can do so. But the let me just find the language in general. Yeah, whenever possible, hotel charges should be placed on a district credit card. If a director uses his or her personal credit card, the charges will be reimbursed. So the language as phrased in the code doesn't require a district credit card, but it does say that whenever possible, charges should be placed on the district credit card. So in my view, it strongly suggests that and this language consistent with the language I discussed earlier, in my view, it strongly suggests that the best practice would be to make these arrangements through the district staff and on a district credit card. And my understanding of the way this is phrased is that the use of a personal credit card would be in extraordinary circumstances. We see the on question 2, and this is the discussion I just had is set forth in the administrative code, and I've been reading the language from the code in that regard. So maybe before I move on to question 2, I'll pause here to see if there are any questions or discussions on that section of the discussion.
Questions, directors?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Steve, please move on. Thank you.
Okay, so then a question arises if a private credit card is used, or excuse me, a personal credit card is used as opposed to a district credit card, and that card may accumulate some benefit of some kind. I think, as you all know, there are cards that have mileage programs and travel points and other benefits that accrue as the card is used. The question becomes, who's entitled to those benefits that accrue? And we've been looking at this for the last couple of weeks. I had an associate researching this, and we haven't found anything directly on point. We have found an opinion of the Fair Political Practices Commission that discussed this, but it discussed these benefits in the context of whether or not they constituted an inappropriate or prohibited gift. As you know, gifts are limited for elected officials in terms of the value, and they also, any gift of a certain value requires implicates a reporting requirement. And the FPPC opined that for purposes of its analysis, these credit, or let's say call them mileage points, whatever you want to call them, they do not constitute a gift, and thus a director is free to accept them. And the analysis was that because those benefits are available to all members of the public in the regular course of business. They're not a gift that's being given to the director or the elected official as a consequence of his or her office. So it's an analysis that's not quite on point, but it does suggest that a director can accept them. However, we've also found with state of California employees, we found a state of California employee handbook that talks about this, and it appears that for state employees, and I want to address the memo itself. You'll see the last letter in our staff report says we have also found that state officials appear to be prohibited from accepting those benefits. And we've looked further, and subsequent to, actually as of this morning, my associate contacted me and found the employee manual. It's an employee handbook that we were looking at. And the employees are deemed to, there's been an amendment to the handbook so that the state employees were, for a while, they were prohibited from accepting these benefits. And the premise was that these benefits were only generated through the expenditure of public funds, and thus they should be returned to the state. Subsequent to that, the employee handbook has been changed, and it allows for the moving forward, it allows employees to keep those benefits. So as to state employees, it's kind of a split decision. At some point, they were required to return them. Now they're allowed to keep them, but that manual goes on to say if that department wants to maintain the initial posture of having employees retain those benefits, then that department can keep that in place. So essentially, it gives the departments of the state the leeway to determine if their employees should have to return these benefits or if the employees can keep those benefits. So I'm sorry, it's kind of a long-winded answer, but I wanted to walk through it all. So in our view, there's no direct guidance on this. And but in our view also, the district is free to address this however it wants. If we did want to articulate a position on this issue, then we would need to add some language to the code of conduct to be specific about this. And that concludes my report. If there's any questions on question 2.
Any question on question 2?
Okay, Madam Chair.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill. This, it's nothing's wrong with it legally, right? But to me, it seems to be an ethical issue. So, but I will hold any further comments until later. Thank you.
Steve?
Is that I just want to make sure, Director Williams, is that a question if whether or not this is legally tenable?
No, I understand what you said, that
Okay.
it sounds like it's okay legally, but I'm just saying that I have a problem with it ethically. That's all.
Understood.
Steve, since Director Williams asked, is this an ethical question? If it's not illegal, I mean, you tell me. Since I'm the subject of this attack, please tell me.
In terms of our legal analysis, we couldn't find any prohibition against a member who uses a personal card and generates, say, some type of incidental benefit from that. We didn't found any prohibition against that, but we did note that within the state of California with certain departments, they've opined that since the benefits were only derived from the expenditure of public funds, that those benefits should not inure to the benefit of the individual whose card was used to generate those benefits.
Yeah.
As to the ethics, I can't speak. In my view, ethics are not a legal issue, and that's something I really am loath to speak to.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Yeah, I guess I'm reading this too, though. It says the Fair Political Practice Commission. I think they are the people that really monitor, ethical items. And so they said such benefit are not considered gift, acceptance of the benefits not, it's not prohibited. So maybe Director Williams should go and get a copy of the FPPC and maybe bring up to tell them that this is unethical. I think that'd be the thing to do.
Well,
Thank you.
Madam Chair, from an ethical standpoint, this is something that could be talked about, because just because something is legal to do does not make it ethical. Now, the reason this came to my attention was that the number of times you use your credit card to make arrangements that should have done ordinarily, and obviously most of the directors, were done on the district credit card. So the only reason it comes to me is why someone would want to go outside of the board or the district process is for some particular gain. So if you look at this, you'll see that you had the same opportunity as everyone else to make arrangements, and you chose to use your card. And I could only think that perhaps it was because you were gaming the system. So that's what I'm saying. And I think we will need to look at that further. But right now, this is information. This is an informational item, and I'd like to go on to the next item part of this.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Williams, for that.
Madam Chair. Hi.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. It's Director Gray. My comment really has to do with whether we use our own card or the district card, which I think it was said that most of us use it. But my concern or my issue would be making sure that if we do use our own personal card to make hotels or airline reservations, that they're comparable to what the district would be able to do for us. So that would be my concern, because if it's more than what, their conference rate is at a hotel or whatever accommodations that our district staff can do, I think that is certainly an issue that we should consider to make sure that we do that we're diligent about that, not use our card when it is more than what we could do, get for a conference rate or an airline rate.
Yes, thank you, Director Gray. I think that's a good comment. I totally agree on that comment. Yeah, we should always be mindful of what we do. And sometimes, I don't know if I should answer the question right now, because I'm looking at not answer, but just make a comment on this. Most times I think we are very mindful to look at the conference rate or the registration rate, but we all know that many times, like Aqua, right? They offer conference rate, but it's filled up, or the headquarters for the conference, is always the first one to be filled up. If we how to say, they register a little bit late, and we have to look for other hotel accommodation. So even though we try to be mindful with that part of that, but again, it happens, right? Not only to me, but I'm pretty sure happened to other directors. And I do agree, that we should we should, and that's what, you know, what as a public, you know, servant, we should be mindful spending public dollar no matter what we do. You know, thank you. Any other comment on 2, or maybe Steve, you want to answer number 3?
I believe staff is going to address number 3.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairwoman Kwan. So the question on number 3 was, is staff time saved by a director making their own travel? So we asked staff involved in this process of handling or processing the receipts or making the arrangements, and the consensus was that there's really not much any time saved by anyone making the arrangements on a personal card.
Okay, thank you. Any comment on this one? Thank you. I think to me, it's only.
I'd like to make a comment, Madam Chair. And you said that one of the reasons that you like to make your own arrangements is because you're helping the general manager with the workload of his staff. And I found that kind of amusing that you would say that, because just like all the other comments, reasons you use for using your own card, none of it really points to a benefit to the district. It all points to a benefit for you. So that's why I say there's an ethical issue here rather than an illegal, because just because you can do it doesn't make it legal. I mean, excuse me, it makes it legal, but it's still unethical if you're not doing it for benefit to the district, but for benefit for yourself.
You know what? Thank you. Thank you, Director Williams. Any other director want to make a comment on this number 4? No? Okay. So I will make a comment after number 4. So please. How much money has been saved to the lower?
Thank you, Chairwoman Kwan. Yeah, so question 4 was, how much money has been saved due to the lower hotel rates secured by the director making their own travel arrangements? And so staff, or finance staff and our admin staff looked at what was in the report given to the committee on the 11th, the annual disclosure reimbursement report, and looked at those particular hotel arrangements and compared them to, and that report is on attachment A, then did an analysis to compare those to the cost if you used a conference rate. And that's presented in table B on packet page 45.
Okay, I read that.
So
Comments, Director Deere? No? Okay, Director. Yes, Director Deere, please.
I just noticed these meals, visit meals, $140, $150. That's a lot of money for one meal. Is that for more than one person?
I'm sorry, I don't know what you're looking at.
Chairwoman Kwan, I believe Director Deere is looking at packet page 44, and he's looking for the reimbursements. I would imagine that's for several days, Director Deere. I don't think that's a single meal, but Margaret, do you have any background information on that? Where it says business meal, $150. It's the second item on the top of.
Yeah. So to clarify, and sorry, I had to find my mouse to get off of mute. So for that particular one, that is a particular single day charge. That is the, so in this case, it looks like it was a director had 2 additional guests, and it was capped at the $50 limit that is stated within the administrative code. So this would be not just one person, one charge, but rather that was a business meal with other individuals.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Deere. Any more comments?
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
to the staff, you have here this chart or here showing the amount of money that was spent for the year, and could you speak to the savings that was gotten by the director making her own arrangements? How much was saved?
Yeah, I can answer that question. Based on this analysis for these particular charges, actual charges versus the rate, there was no savings by the director using her credit card. It costs more.
Cost more. Okay, thank you.
Director Deere?
Nothing.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
This is Director Houston. This is Director Houston, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
You know, I'm just so disappointed in this discussion because while, you know, we're all about transparency here, and this did come up, I think, last month, but at the same time, it just seems so pointed at one board member. And, you know, I'm not sure what the solution is here and what maybe one of the other board members wants. Maybe we want to change the code. But right now, the code says we do have the option to have staff make arrangements, which most of us do, or you can get reimbursed. And I think that's very fair. So at the end of the day, I don't think we need to change the way the code is written at this time. But separately, you know, I mean, what is it that we're trying to accomplish here? To say, you know, let all of our, you know, we forced our staff has to make all of our arrangements for us. That's the only way we can do this. I mean, I think everyone's well aware that the water district has a lot of perks, if you will, and we get criticized for this all the time. So I don't know how other districts do it. I think our code works fine. I think that people, you know, can either do their own arrangements and get reimbursed or have the district do it. What does it matter, quite frankly? You sign documents that say that I'm telling the truth when I sign for these reimbursements. You know, and quite honestly, there are many reasons, whether staff makes arrangements or a board member makes their own arrangements, that you know, things just don't work out the way they ought to, you hope. Because, for example, I try to let staff know right away if I see an email, that there's an early bird registration or whatever, and I shoot it right away and say, hey, register me and book my hotel, because we know there's only so many rooms. And this happens all the time, you guys. If you're going to certain conferences, oh my goodness, you're going to the, you know, Monterey or some of these other conferences, there's only so many rooms. And a lot of times, even when I've asked staff to jump on it, you know, they find that the rooms are taken. So it's through no fault of our own. And I have no idea sometimes per se what the rate was that I got booked on versus what it could have been, you know. So I don't think that we can say that anyone is deliberately staying in more expensive hotels or what have you. And by the way, staff hasn't pushed back to directors, at least, you know, not to me, you know, and said, hey, director, you know, that place is really expensive. You shouldn't stay there, you know. So a lot of times it's just, hey, you know, we need rooms. But the last thing is, and I've seen this happen before, and I think that's another thing we have to be concerned about is, you know, I literally have been at conferences and seen board members from other water districts come up and register on site. You know, I kid you not. I mean, I've been at Aqua and I've seen other directors that we know walk up and say, hey, you know what, I'm here, I need to register, and they do it right there with their credit card, and you know they're gonna go back to their agency and get reimbursed. So I don't see a reason to change this. Of course, it already says ideally the staff does it, But I guess my only other thought would be, if that's what the board wants, to say that no director can make their own arrangements in any way, shape, or form, that our staff has to do it, then maybe that's a conversation that you guys want to have. But I don't see this being an issue right now. And lastly, maybe it's just like our meals. We only get so much reimbursement. If you go to a more expensive meal, you only get so much reimbursement. So if someone's making arrangements that are more expensive on their own dime, they pay for it. But I will say, again, hotels a lot of times get sold out. These are expensive locations. And, you know, what are we supposed to do? You know, go to the Motel 6 because, you know, like 5 miles away because we can't get a room close. And you know, you guys, all these conferences, they hold them in locations that happen to be expensive. So that's my comments.
Thank you, Director Houston.
Director Kwan, can I make
Yes.
a comment?
Sure.
Yes, you know, I don't think this is anything but being transparent, because I think any elected official should be diligent and responsible when they use any resources that's related to the public. So it's an analysis, it's a discussion about whether or not we should review a code that may need to be tightened, that will make sure that we're being conscious of what we do. And I think that's reasonable. And I think Director Houston said everyone knows that the water district gets first. I never look at my job as getting first. I look at whatever I do as being part of my job and being responsible. I think we all do or should. So I think, again, it's not, I don't want to look at it as an attack on any one person. I think it was told that this is an annual review, and it just so happens, I think we're looking at Director Kwan's information. But, you know, as I stated before, I think we should be diligent about what we do, that we do spend money, that is public money, in a way that's responsible. And so it's just to remind us that if staff can make our reservations and it's more feasible or economical, we should do that. There are always circumstances that may not let us do that, but it's a reminder, and that is part of being transparent, that we are trying to do the right thing. And so I don't see this as, I hope folks don't see it as an attack on any particular person. It's just a review and asking staff to analyze an area that maybe board members can tighten up their policies or the administrative code so that we can be more responsible and economical as we carry out our duties as elected officials. And so with that, I don't know where the discussion will go, but I think the most important thing is that we are diligent about how we spend public money as we make reservations, whether we do it on a credit card or if we use staff. If it's more efficient to use staff, I recommend we do that as much as we can. Thank you.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to say that this is an information item, and what I asked for is information. And I asked for that information because when I was asked this information on the last month's meeting, I got answers from Madam Chair that seemed as odd as the number of items that she had to get reimbursed for, when there were no other directors with that kind of request. So that's, I was asking for information. I was not asking to punish anyone. I was asking for information. That could be because I felt that maybe there was something I was missing, that our director has been on the board for over 24 years. So I said, maybe I'm missing something, that I'm not taking advantage of making my own hotel reservations, the benefits of the rewards or whatever. And as far as doing it to ease the workload of the general manager staff, that was kind of a strange answer, because the general manager staff is available to us. They're there to serve us, just like we are here to serve our constituents, and we can't serve our constituents without having the help of our staff. So then the other thing was really got me was that the money that was saved by making her own arrangements. And it was shown here that there was really no money saved. We actually paid more money. And and perhaps now that I see that there's nothing wrong with doing that, that maybe I should make my own arrangements and reap the benefits of the awards that I get, rewards rather, that I get by using my own card and having the district foot the bill. So that's it for now. I am not asking for an action from the board. I think the board can see what's going on, and in the spirit of transparency, there's transparency here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. So now it's my comment. Thank you for bringing this to the board's attention. And thank you. I think the last word kind of means something when you said there's transparency here. Yes, I've been doing that for the last so many years, 2024. I'm not sure how long. And I give you a little bit history. I think in the beginning, the board member do get a district credit card. I don't know if Steve was here. I think that maybe it's Wayne's time. The district do have a gift director. I think those days then was a Central and West Basin. And of course, you know, things happen. You know, some people use the credit card for wrong purposes. Okay, so we kind of did away with the credit card program, and I guess from that point on, I kind of make arrangements for my own traveling, because the fact that I travel a lot, even on my own business, and you know, I have a business to manage, and I have my parents to take care of. So I don't think there was any question raised the past many years, and you know, talk to me, you know, because everything is reported. You know, like Margaret saying that this is required by the law, right? We have to report that anything over $100 need to be reimbursed. And I signed, like Director Hilson is saying, that I signed the report, and I don't know why it become an issue. And then I think on the last 260, I think the question number 3 and number 4, you know, staff, you know, did a thing, especially on the last page, I think packet page 45. Why am I being targeted? If this is for a general discussion about this one item of the annual disclosure of reimbursement report, and if you want to compare, you know, the conference rate, you know, like first, the conference rate is different. Okay, like AWWA, they have like 20 hotels. So I don't know how staff get the medium of how much money that conference rate is first. And I'm surprised though, you know, if it's information, why Director William, you only ask for mine? I mean, I don't know. I guess why don't you compare all directors' hotel costs, and why just me? I understand that, you know, it's election time. You're attacking me, you're pocketing me, and I guess here staff did. Yeah, the another thing is why staff only did mine, or maybe you just asked for mine, not the other directors. And then you want transparency. And I think I'm going to request that we should put our MWD web expenses on the website as well, because that doesn't show. It shows like how much you get paid on per DM, but doesn't show your travel expenses. And it just, it's just very disappointing. It's just very disappointing. I've been doing that for so many years. You know what I'm saying? Transparency, right? I report everything, and staff been doing a good job, you know, and I don't see any problem. Me, if it's not unethical or illegal, if it's even on item 2 is FPPC, the fair political practice say it's okay. I don't know why this is being discussed and put me on the table. Why targeting me? It's just, I understand. I have said it before. Okay, I said it before. You know, it's election time. It's a fair game. But for a director to openly, publicly put it on the agenda to attack me, that is unethical. You want to know what's unethical? That's unethical. And oh, I think Doug, Mr. Solomon's still on here. Hey, you know what, Doug? I have to say this. Thank you. You've been a gentleman. It's a fair game. I think you're more civilized than certain board member on my board in this election. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Solomon. Okay, any more further?
Madam Chair? Madam Chair,
Yes, please.
you are incredible.
I am. Thank you.
You play the woe is me card every opportunity that you get. Talk about targeting a person. When I ran for re-election in 2018, what did you do? Huh? Think about that. I have it in writing. So this is not about targeting you because of the election. And I don't see it targeting you when I just asked the question, why is it that you're the only one with this list of reimbursements? And I just questioned the reimbursements. That's all. There was no attack on you. If anyone questions you, you see it as an attack and you throw out your woe is me card, poor little Carol. So I don't think people are buying that, you know. So again, I was asking for information. We got the information, and I believe that it pointed out some things. So thank you very much.
So, Director Ram, just for the record, since it's recorded, I never attacked you publicly or at a board setting when you were running for your re-election. What I do?
But Carolyn, Carol, I beg your pardon. I have the flyer, the printed material that you and your colleagues at that time used. And that was, and you know who they are. And you know it.
I did. I'm not denying what I did, but I am saying that I did not attack you at a board meeting, wasting staff time on something like this. Okay, I did it off my West Basin duty. That's my prerogative to do anything, but I did not waste staff time to attack you. Okay, with all due respect, because we have a role as a director. We have to respect each other. We have to disagree. We have to agree for being disagree. And I always have done that respectfully. Okay, and just for you to know, all right, I have never attacked you at a board setting during your re-election time.
You have to, Carol. Jesus, you're incredible. Thank you. Thank you.
No, I only said something when you attack staff. Okay, you could look at the record.
Staff.
When you attack staff, okay, our staff, West Basin staff. All right, thank you. All right, anything else on this item? Anything else? So this is information. Okay, so what can I say? You know, election time, tense, and cannot apologize anymore to put staff on this position, but thank you. Thank you. And I'm pretty sure staff, especially the finance department, if we do anything, even in the gray area, you'll come to the director and tell us, you know, this is not right, it doesn't look good, and it happens, and we really appreciate that. Thank you. Transparency is important to us. And sometimes, the admin code this thick, and I don't understand all of them, and Steve is here, and then, and if you guys caught us doing anything in that borderline and gray area, just inform us. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Anything else on the agenda? Any closed section?
No, we have no closed session today.
No question, no closed sessions? Okay. Director comments? Dr. Deer?
No comments, thanks.
Okay, anybody else? Dr. Gray? All right, I see no hands raised, no green light on the microphone. Thank you. And Steve, anything else?
Nothing from me.
Thank you, thank you. And General Manager?
No, Madam Chair, and I didn't hear any future agenda items, so I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for the Finance Department, Margaret, Marianne, and everybody else. Thank you very much. And see you until next meeting. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.